everyone. Welcome to another episode of Customer Success Talks, Real Challenges, Experts Advice. And thank you for being here with us. Thank you for supporting our this project that all that we want to do is help you excel in your career. And that's why we bring real challenges and we bring experts, people with a lot of experience to give solutions to those challenges. And today is not the exception. I just want to remind you that we are now available on YouTube as well. So you can listen us in Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, but now you can also see us interacting between us on YouTube. And today's episode is about mastering senior stakeholders communication. We as customer success managers, we have our stakeholders and they all have different personalities, different backgrounds, different years of experience. But when we talk about senior stakeholders, today we're focusing more on the decision makers. And we know that their mindset, their goals, and their way of thinking is totally different as when we talk to super users, for example. So that's what we're going to focus on today. And today we have another amazing guest with over 20 years of experience in this amazing world of customer success. Can you imagine that? Now, before we introduce our guest and before we jump into the challenges of today's episode, Nav, what do you think about today's episode?
I think it's such a great topic. It's one of those things where CSMs who are sort of in the middle of their career or even early in their career that have to or find themselves having to talk to decision makers and trying to influence the way that they're thinking with what the message they're trying to say is. It's a really difficult thing to do. So, understanding or maybe even getting some tips and tricks around that is going to be very useful for them.
I totally agree. And that's our goal. That's what we want to do today. And Nav, let's go ahead and introduce our amazing guest today. Actually, let me start by saying that has 20 years of experience, like I just mentioned. He is an award winner and I would say customer leader in Europe, definitely. So please go to the About section and hit follow because you will see all the videos and all the articles our guests post on LinkedIn. And James Lawson has worked with big names like Oracle and also has helped a lot of huge customers like Nike, Liverpool football team, HSBC, and more. Now, it's not only that. He has had roles as Vice President of Customer Success, also Director of Customer Success and Enablement. So all of this experience and background, he thought one day, why don't I create my consultancy and help other customer success professionals? That's where River Consulting Group came into play. Thank you so much, James, for being here with us and for your time.
You're welcome. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Very happy to be here.
Super. We want to start by actually knowing a little bit more about your consulting firm. How does it work? What is your goal? How are you helping customer success leaders out there?
Yeah, sure. So my mission really is to get customer success to the top table at the C-suite and really give them a frontline role in driving customer satisfaction. The consultancy offers 3 services: consulting, and that's really about making customer success a company capability rather than just a function. So the function would spearhead it. Mentoring, so mentor a lot of leaders, whether it be CCOs, CEOs are in fact there as well, and CS leaders. And then training, and the training is around CS teams and just making sure that they're able to operate within the environment they are in and deliver, great value to their customers. And they're the services that I've put together, which has been born out of those experiences you mentioned. I wouldn't be doing this if it weren't for that background. So yeah, thanks for the plug. Great. That's a great topic to be talking about, given where we are, like in the economy, but also, what the challenges new CSMs face in the environment today, for sure.
Yeah, I completely agree. And your consultancy seems like a very, very important thing to have out there to really help navigate some of the challenges that a function that's changing a lot recently probably really needs, especially from the top down. Our first challenge today is around over communicating. So sometimes we feel like we're the experts in the room, and we fall into the trap of over explaining due to our expertise. So we tend to talk too much, which can cause us to lose the message that we're trying to get across. So from your experience, James, and maybe some of the work that you've done in your consultancy, have you seen that happening? And if so, like what are some of the ways that up and coming CSMs or even new CS leaders can overcome this challenge?
Yeah, I see it a lot. In fact, it's something that's still quite rife in the industry, and the what it does is you start to lose engagement with the key stakeholder because you're not using a neuro-linguistic programming technique, which is if you Google it, neuro-linguistic programming, you're not using something called chunking and able to concisely articulate value with impact. And that takes a bit of practice and time, but being able to tell a story that's backed with data and that story has an impact and a value, then you can start to speak with senior stakeholders with conviction. And those conversations become quick fire, and you can kind of assert your authority with your key stakeholder. A CSM should really look at how they can lead that conversation by doing that. Otherwise they become subservient. They're kind of on the back foot. When you see boxers in a ring and they're in the middle moving the people around, that's where you want to be. You want to be in the middle and just sort of usher them around. There is a lot around that with soft skills in terms of how you hone that in. So there's having to make sure that your outcome is always front of mind, and also even by going to the customer's website, understanding their C-level goal. Because one thing you don't see that often that causes the conversation to go, left and right is a CSM, a great CSM will say, how does that impact your company's mission? Now, it could be a piece of software that does something that's far, far away from what impacts that C-level goal. But ultimately, what causes procurement to tick it off, or what causes a company to renew, is that the experience is one thing, but being able to align it with the strategy and help their customers is the next thing. So how you articulate the problem it solves, how it helps the customer's customer, and how it aligns with their strategy are the sort of things to bear in mind before you enter a call as a CSM. And some people do it by writing it down, right? So one of the tricks you can do is, hey, I'm about to jump on a call with this customer. Let's just quickly check what their North Star is. This is their North Star. What are they like? What can they do? Have I spoken before? How am I going to command this conversation? Just put together like a one-line hypothesis, that you're going to always home in on. And once you do that, you're off to a good start. The issue comes when you're having these conversations that you don't know the character you're dealing with quite often if you're going in fresh. So there are tools you can use to look at that, disc profiling, crystal nose, etc. But you need to do your homework, first of all, about the company, and then understand what that persona wants, and are they interlinked, and treat it with that approach. So when you're talking to them, you get what they're trying to do, but you also start to dig into what they're trying to do as well. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a topic that, especially the way that you just explained it, is it's something that's hits really close to home for me. And the reason that it does is because I've been a CS leader at a number of different companies. And when I come in, one of the first things I look at is how the business reviews are run. And almost every single time, what they're talking about during a business review is not relevant to the executive in the room. And so, and this reviewing the business review process comes from the leading indicator, which is that executives are not showing up to business reviews. So then you ask yourself, are you actually talking about the right things that the executive actually cares about, right? And what you touched on absolutely rings true. Understand what the company's trying to do, and then help them plan towards that. That's what the executive is going to be measured against. If you come in and you're talking about usage and support tickets, you're going to lose your executive after about two business reviews. So absolutely agree with what you just said.
Sometimes, like if you've got an executive in the room and then you've got a customer stakeholder or maybe your champion in the room, I think CSMs are fearful because the exec is there and they have some form of power. They're just a human like anyone else, right? But they're in that meeting, and as it pains me to say it, sometimes they don't know why they're there. so so as a CSM, you go, I need to bring this guy in. So you get to do that, and you should not be afraid of that. Say, how is this impacting you, David? If David's the exec, how is this impacting you, David? And you've got to call that out, because if David's gone, I don't care about this, then the whole thing is a wish-wash. And actually the preparation hasn't been done properly for the meeting. So those business reviews, I do believe that a majority of the actual work is done before and after, and the business review is then that conversation. I don't know if you agree with that.
100% agree with that.
So,
yeah.
and then I think that two-way communication has to be about how you assert your authority or leadership, regardless of your experience, to sort of to drive the room. And the other thing that is key that I believe all CSMs should learn is the key elements of human behavior around how you speak to them. So I'm talking about SCARF. So SCARF stands for status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. Now, even as we're speaking now, that has rolled through your head maybe 3 or 4 times as a behavioural element. Now, if you're in the law tech world, then status is going to be up there, top of mind. If you're in something around public sector, fairness is probably that top behavioural element. So when you come into these calls, again, as part of the prep or as part of how you're going to converse, bear in mind what's important to this person outside of what we're actually talking about. What is the demeanour, the common demeanour of this person? And there are plenty of tools that can pre-prep that. And when I mentor leaders to mentor their teams on how they talk to C-suite, I always say, don't go into that meeting as your company representative. Go in there as you, and your job is to lead that meeting. So the only way you're going to lead it is to articulate value with impact, storytell, and be very competent at dealing with the objections that come in, backwards and forwards. But you're never going to do that without understanding the elements of human behavior that C-suite have. C-suite are in there. What they'll do is they'll go, I need to take something from this and I need to bring it out. They haven't actually got to do any comms. What they need to do is come away and go, they've got this. That's what they want to feel from you.
Yeah, I've in the past told my strategic CSMs that if you're not reading the annual reports for your customers, so that you can actually go in and actually talk to some of the things that those C-suites have written in those reports, then you're only doing half your job, realistically. Like if you're going to an SBR and you're asking questions about what they want to do, and you've got all of this information available to you, and you're not using that, you've already lost the game.
Yeah, totally agree. It's a really tough one, because I think it is a lot of knowledge to inhale, and I do think there is you've got to have quite a lot of tenacity to bring it to the table, and I think a lot of CSMs do fear that, because they've got a lot on their plate. They've got so much to do that, if there are environments in which CSMs are becoming extensions of support, which still happens, sadly, or if there's environments where they are on the back foot, it's hard to then say, well, I need to learn a ton of stuff about this customer to go into this meeting. So I think, as we said earlier, the pre-prep and the post-prep, the post research is key. And I think the other thing that I think is also key, when I speak to C-level, the thing that comes across to me, certainly recently, not so much 10 years ago, is there's this hunger for adherence. So in other words, no matter what you say in that room, there's the skeptic in all of them that are going, are you going to execute on this? And if you're not giving me dates, or if you're not going to give me some specifics, I'm not entirely sure I'm bought in. And this comes from C-suites that are, fans of products. Even the fans of the Apple products have this conversation, right? So it does start to resonate with you, and you do start to think, okay, I need to place into their mind confidence that we are going to execute this. So it's always good to kind of go, when you're conversing with C-suite, to say, in terms of next steps, that little section where you say, okay, next steps, at the end of the meeting, summarize it. This is what we're going to do. This is what we are going to do, right? Not I. It's got to be that partnership. This is what we are going to do. And what would give you the confidence that we are going to execute on this? Just ask the question. It might be dates. It might be anything else, a delivery. It might be resolving something. It works in the same way as unblocking a priority, but you're with the customer. So they're key elements to it.
You're speaking my language, James.
That's amazing. Like all of these tools that we're given, those are people like you need to pause and go back and go through these steps because like James and Nav said, you have to do your homework first. You have to go and do your research. You have to understand the persona. So that way you can be that person. You're not only the strategic customer success manager, like Nav says and refers to his teams, but you have to also place yourself of how that person will think. That client that you're managing and it is managing a company, that company is also yours. And what would you like to see when someone takes your time to sit in a meeting? They have to bring something back to the company, like James said. So keeping that in mind is super important. Now, how to do that? That's all. That's what we just touched on. Like going through those steps are really important. And that's like avoiding communicating comes in place when you are sometimes even unsecure because you haven't done your homework. And we have to always keep in mind that we are not the only customer success manager out there. Each customer, everyone wants a piece of them. Everyone wants a piece of the cake, especially when it's decision makers. Not only externally as customer success managers, as sales reps, but also internally as colleagues, as the CEO. Everyone wants a piece of their time, and that's where we have to be relevant. So I know we have given a lot of tips now, but let's focus a little bit more into how can a customer success manager um, stand out from other customer success out there, because people listening to this, they have to be the best ones. So James, any recommendation you have for them to
Yeah, I mean,
stand out?
There's two things that I would take away, which is the first thing is, have you guys ever heard of the peak end rule when it comes to a customer experience? Have you ever heard of that? The peak end. So with anything that has a great
No, I haven't heard of that.
experience, it has a
Not me.
peak and it has an end. So the peak bit is where you go, wow, this is great, like a roller coaster. The peak is the bit where it's flying through the air, and then when at the end, you come off and go, wow, that was amazing, right? To create a peak end in a conversation, you have to take them to a place where they go, an aha moment, or a wow. You always go into those meetings with what I like to call a bottle of wine. You're going into their house, I'm going to give you something, right? And then when you leave, you end it in a way that they feel there's another bottle of wine coming. And you go, wow, this is good. Okay, this is good. Now, no matter what that conversation entails, even if it's a meeting where the customer is unhappy and the senior stakeholders are unhappy, you have to take big bites out of that meeting. Yeah, because that's why you're having the conversation. Otherwise, don't have it at all, right? So you're in there to go, I'm giving you something in this conversation. What they don't want to do is leave going, well, I didn't experience anything from that CSM. He just told me what I already knew based on what he'd sent me for the prep. So you've got to deliver something in that meeting. Peak end. There's an ice cream in the UK called a cornetto. I don't know if you're anything over there. You eat ice cream, you love that. It's got a little bit of chocolate at the end. It's great, right? It's the same sort of thing. Everything is peak end. The other thing when you're talking back to a customer, and a great way to prep is to ensure, and you can get this information extremely easy, ensure that you are looking at what they're trying to achieve and why, where are they now, and what next, and categorize that in terms of clarity. Are they really clear on what they're trying to achieve and why? Where are they now and what next? Climate, i.e. what are their blockers? Is it structural processes? Is it individuals? Is it leadership example? Yeah. And competency. The C-suite, do they have those behaviors that can drive change? Right? Change is so difficult. It's human. It's difficult for everyone, even C-suite. So when you look at it like that and you start to map that out, you start to go, okay, they're not clear on X, they're not clear on Y. These are the blockers. What you should be writing down before that meeting are the big questions. So it's not about what you do know about that customer, it's about everything you don't. And that's how you'll deal with objection handling. And when you go through that story, the storytelling of, right, this is where we are, this is where we get, as I understand it. Do you understand it the same way? You're using that framework. What do we want to achieve and why? Where are we now? What next? That's your story, right? Hopefully that's helpful.
That's no, absolutely. That's great. No, that's great. And yeah, that's very, very useful information for CSMs that are up and coming to really understand, because I think being in an environment like that is really difficult to think about all these things, but really trying to frame all of that, the way they're going to be approaching that, I think is really important. Our next challenge is around how to balance empathy versus assertiveness when you're talking to senior stakeholders. And I think when you're talking to decision makers, who often operate under high pressure and tight schedules, the CSMs, obviously we have to empathize with their challenges. But it's obviously equally important to be a bit assertive, especially when it comes to the points that you're trying to get across, the timelines that you're trying to stick to, the accountability that you're trying to keep the customer to as well. Because the reality is, if the value drops at some point, you're the one that's going to be wearing the churn, right? So you have to make sure that you're driving that accountability and the timeline that way as well. So from your experience, how do you effectively balance the empathy and assertiveness to make sure that you're actually driving your points and the timelines and the accountability that you need
so
at the CSM?
I've seen this go two ways, and I don't think there's a set way of doing it other than sort of the NLP stuff in terms of mirroring, etc. when you're doing empathy, when you're showing empathy, however. I think the way I've seen it done extremely well is where rather than go, I'm really sorry for your experience, and obviously there's this, rather than just be empathetic, start to almost dig your fingers into the pain. So start to go, okay, I hear you and this is bad, but let me just understand more about that. Let's unpack that pain. What happens when you unpack it is one of several things. Either the pain is leading to some severe business impact, and then you put your assertiveness in and go, we need to deal with that. This is terrible. We need to do something, and this is what we're going to do. This is the plan. I'm going to make a plan, come back to you. Again, having a plan is everything. Just have a plan, right? Whatever you do. If you find by digging your teeth into it that actually it's more about the way that they want things to operate rather than the problem itself, then that's a discussion to be had. And I think the empathy level has to be like, I see where you're trying to get to, and I actually can see why you'd want that. But now we need to talk about, well, what's the impact of not doing that? What's the impact of doing it the way you want to do it? That's the big question, right? So when you do that, you start to get them to question why they want it. There was a customer, and obviously I can't mention them. They wanted everything driven through PowerPoint documents that were saved, okay? But the software only did it in PDF. Now you can convert, etc. I said, no, we definitely want it in PowerPoint. That's the way we've operated. And the CSM, it did a great job. What they did was they said, others are doing this way, and this is the value of doing it this way, right? Now that might not seem like a great value. They're just two different formats. However, by doing it this way, they have unlocked other workflows that will give you value. So the problem to be resolved in the empathy side is not just about showing empathy and talking about resolution. It's about, I empathize, but have you thought of the impacts of doing it the way we're doing now. Obviously, if it's a solid problem, then you go from, okay, business impact, I'm going to switch from empathy to, we need to make a plan. Most C-suite would kind of back that with, no, you need to make a plan and come back to us because it's your problem, right? And I think that's where a CSM needs to really to grab it by the horns and go, now I've digged into the pain, I'm going to dig very deep into why we're in this situation. But you don't care about that. You care about forward facing. So it's all about forward facing. A very common problem CSMs have is they don't look back and forward. They look back, and then when you're looking at the trees and you're skiing, you're going to hit the trees. So that's what happens. So you just got to keep them on track. And again, going back to our initial point of the podcast, if you talk about this stuff at length, you're actually not giving the C-suite any takeaway. All you're doing is exacerbating the issue or exacerbating what they're feeling. You just want to go straight in there, injection, come out. Right? I know.
You have used some of the best analogies I've heard in a long time. I'm going to steal some of these analogies because they are so.
My favorite one is the ice cream.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to use that one. I'll credit you for it, but I'm just definitely going to use it. I'm going to say when you talk to executives, be an ice cream cone, and hopefully that'll really
my
drive the point.
Executives do love analogies, like metaphors. They love it because they're related. Yes, story.
Yeah. Storytelling.
And one thing,
it's all about the story.
A very good friend and an amazing enablement person, enabler. He's called Maurice Hellemans. I'm going to call him out here because he's incredible. One thing he taught me that I've carried with me forever from the Oracle days is that whatever meeting you go into, whatever conversation you have with C-suite, just enter with a grabber. And a grabber is something that makes the whole conversational relatable, no matter what the heat or temperature of the room is. If you do small talk, it's terrible. Don't do small talk. Makes me laugh, but just small talk is not the place for C-level. If you want to start to get them, bring a grabber in. And a grabber could be anything. It could be something that helps the story. People look at my chair and go, "Oh, he's got a Batman chair." It's a grabber, right? So, as a CSM, just exactly unlock it, give them a great story, object, be succinct, command it, and then when you leave, of all the vendors, you will be the one they'll remember because they'll go, "That guy really did his homework and knows what he's doing, and I've got confidence with him, and it took 20 minutes. Fantastic."
Like Sahil had me something, and something really simple, and it's not that we are only in business to business or B2C. We are in H to H, human to human, and as humans, right, we are really visual. That's why there are things that we cannot understand that are going on in the world, like without going into any conspiracy, right? But you know where I'm going to. So we are really visual, and that's why we have to not only give the relevant information, not only do our homework about our personas. And sorry, that's customer success. There's a lot behind customer success, a lot of psychological stuff as well. And we have to always create that image so that way they can first understand and filter what we're trying to say. They can see the future of the benefits and how it will impact, like James, like what you said. But also these analogies will make you highlight of, okay, this is the customer success who said about the ice cream, right? Or he sees customer success as that we are ninjas. We have to go in and come out. So that's what we have to always keep in mind. We are talking to humans, H to H.
Yeah, brilliant. I agree. I think there's so many different levels, right? And one of the things that I think we uncover in all of these episodes is the different layers of the onion that is customer success and being a CSM, and all the different things you have to keep in mind. And the funny thing is, like you look at a lot of the roles in an organization, and a lot of them are sort of one track. You sales, you kind of follow a formula. With product, and there's a formula for that as well. With customer success, there's so much to it. You're sort of central internally, and you're also central externally as well. There's so many different types of conversations you're having. You have to be a seller. You have to be, It's sometimes a personal friend. I work in legal tech, and let me tell you, like, lawyers wear their hearts on their sleeves. So if they've had a bad day in the morning, they need someone to rant to. And it's good that if they feel like they can do that to you. But there have been times where like I've had CSMs have to be a therapist for a customer that's crying about some personal issues that they've got, and like you find yourself in these environments where you have to sort of pivot a bit to try and talk to your contacts and your clients and your customers in the way that you need to in that moment, which is not an easy task. But I think with a lot of the things that James has told us
And I
today,
think it's
I think
sad that
there's a lot we can kind of take
there's an
away.
opportunity, but it's sad that even today, the C-suite often want to speak to the C-suite, and then when they speak to the C-suite, they want to hear from the doers, right? So that puts CSM in a kind of a hotel concierge position where they're not really C-suite, but they're not really doers, right? So the thing to elevate that conversation is to assert dominance, as crazy as that sounds, and that means like, well, I'm a leader. If you're not making your CSMs leaders, then you're failing your team. Your team are failing you. The CEO needs to take 100% accountability for the fact that their CSMs are leaders. They should listen to them like they're the boss. They're the customer advocates, and that's what puts them in a position of power when they go into those meetings. Whereas if they feel subservient to it in the organization and they don't feel like they have customer success as a capability across the organization, then they go into those meetings feeling like that they are just a conduit to the departments, and that will dictate success, and that will dictate how they talk to C-suite. Do you see what I mean? So when they have that conversation, in the back of their head, CSM's thinking, oh wow, I've got to go and speak to product, etc. That should never cross their mind. They should feel like everybody has got your back. Where that is done extremely well, those companies have the lowest customer acquisition costs in SaaS by a long way. So it's fascinating that C-level conversations can be impacted by this, and I think it's I think the opportunity is if we can give CSMs a seat at the top table, and have that capability around them, then they can articulate value with impact on their customers, and C-suite on their customer side will respect it.
And nowadays, customers, especially decision makers, nowadays the world is changing, is challenging for not only us but also for them. And budgeting and ROI are like the top elements of for customers. So we have to keep that in mind in those meetings as well. Bring some data, bring numbers, show them that impact.
Yeah.
And it's time to start wrapping up. Um, I wish we could continue, but we have to stop. It's time for you to process all of these amazing tips given by Nav and James today. But we talked a lot about what to do, and what to do. What about if we finish our episode with the top 3 things that customer success should not do when dealing with decision makers or senior stakeholders?
Things they should not do.
James, would you like to start?
So I would say the top thing not to do is do not go into a meeting cold. Don't go in without preparing, for sure. That would be my number 1 tip.
Yeah, that's definitely a good one. I'd say, I mean, don't make fun of the person you're talking to, but that's an obvious one. I'd say, I'd say, address everyone in the room, and don't expect the one person in that room to be the key and sole decision maker. Time and time again, I've seen CSMs trying to do that and realize that they've got a very, very trusted advisor they're going to go through. And if you're not addressing everyone in the room, you're probably going to lose some of the confidence.
Yeah, and when you lose that, you lose a lot. I would say that think strategic. Remember, you are the partner, you are the strategic advisor, you are the right hand, but you're not the only person who's in that position. So do your homework, mindset, and place yourself as if you were that person behind the scenes. This is your business as well. That is your company as well. And once you change your mindset into that, you will know what is really important to bring. It's a lot of not only what is happening during. It's a lot of before with the invite, what you highlight, and then the after of the highlight, of what you're gonna send to them. So it's a lot. There's more that I wish we could go to, but if we haven't covered everything, always go out there to communities, go to LinkedIn, follow our guests as well. They always publish a lot, and that will be it for today's episode. Thank you, James, a lot for your time. Thank you for being here and transferring all of those 20 years of
No
experience
worries.
into
Thank you. Thanks a lot for having
customer
me.
success, listening
Appreciate
to
it.
today's episode.
Thanks, James. Yeah, it's a great discussion today. Really, really enjoyed it.
Loved it. Nav, it's a
Cheers.
pleasure working
Thanks.
with you as
Bye.
usual. See you next time.
As always, mate.
Bye bye.